in a car like this, I think the offerings would go down quite quickly. However, when you get a car like this and you want to maintain it, what's the first thing you'd look for in the glove compartment? The manual, right? You're not just going to take it to Great Canadian Oil Change and get it done. You're not going to buy the cheapest tires you can find. You're going to be very, very specific about how you treat this car. So, you look at the owner's guide, certain fuel goes in it, right? I couldn't say, I think I'm just going to put some diesel or some regular fuel in this, right? What would happen? It would run poorly. But our bodies are really no different, right? God is saying, look, you can put in regular fuel, but He desires premium, right? You're going to run better efficiency. Probably not in this car. You probably won't get good gas mileage, whatever you do to it. However, God is saying, I want you to take care of this temple. Now, Adventists have been studied all over the world. You've heard of the blue zones. They're finding that Adventists that live the health message live anywhere from 7 to 10 years longer. And this is true. I came across some data where they studied some Adventists in California. And they found that Adventists that were living the health message, lung cancer was 21% lower, colon and rectum cancer, 62% lower, and breast cancer, 85% lower. In California women, it would say that 76% lower for Adventist women, comparing cancer rates to those of Adventists in California to other Californians. And I'm telling you, this isn't just because they lived in California. Don't move to California. We need you here. The thing is, God is saying if we apply the things that we learn, not saying that no one will ever get sick. That's not true. There's environment, there's genetics, all these things come into play. However, there is an advantage. We look at the mortality of men, comparing the cancer rates. You see that Adventists in California, 60% lower for cancer. Now, growing up, I grew up on the Ukrainian diet, a lot of dairy and a lot of meat. And I know a lot of relatives would struggle with heart disease and cancer and things like that. Now, an experiment was done where they had a man who was eating a certain way for a number of years, and then what happened was for about 2.5 years, he changed his diet. The problem was he had a really bad clogged artery, and they had to do a bypass. So what they did, with him just making some dietary changes, this is what happened. So on the left was what it looked like before, and on the right, after about 2.5 years, there was a lot of improvement. A lot of people might say, but if you eat these things and you eat, a plant-based diet, are you going to be able to get your protein? Well, we can ask this guy right here, and he's doing just fine. He's able to get just as much nutrients as he needs. Some of the strongest men. There's a man that I came across. He's from Iran, but he lives in Germany, and he has the world record for being able to pick up a car and walk the furthest. So a car was about 2,300 pounds, and he'd be able to pick it up. They have it on some sort of stand where he could lift, and he has the world record for being able to carry a car, and he eats the same way as the guy on the screen. Very interesting. How about exercise? So what was the first exercise that God had given to Adam and Eve? Do you remember? Working in the garden, that's right. And so when the children of Israel left Egypt, there was something very interesting. Joshua 5:6 tells us that God had His children of Israel walk. They were used to eating the Egyptian diet, and He's saying, you know what, you need some sun. I'm going to get some water out of this rock. I'll send you bread from heaven. God was giving them a new start. Now, when it comes to a new start and living a healthy lifestyle, sometimes we don't trust God, and trust is something that's really important. We have circumstances just like the children of Israel where there's a Red Sea in front of you, an army behind you, and we feel like we have to compromise. Now, I don't know if you heard about this gentleman. In 2016, he was the Brazilian Series B Player of the Year. Did you guys hear about him? His mother-in-law had planted a seed with him about the Sabbath. He was the goalie of the year in Brazil. His mother-in-law was an Adventist. And she said, you know, Saturday's the Sabbath, Friday night to Saturday night. And he was convicted, but for 12 years he didn't do it because he was making lots of money. But over time, he was convicted, and he said, you know what? I need to do something about this. Carlos de Costa, he ended up leaving his contract, thousands and thousands of dollars, even millions possibly, to keep the Sabbath, and he didn't get re-signed. He started a Bible study with his teammates, but he left his profession. You see, James 4:17 says, to him that knows to do good and does it not, to him it is sin. Sometimes we are sick because God is impressing us to do things, and we just won't budge. God says, I know this is light, but I will not walk in it. God blesses us. If he's willing to not play sports on Sabbath, should we not as well? If he's willing not to be paid on Sabbath, should we spend money? Probably not. See, God is asking us to honor that day. Not only when we keep the Sabbath are we honoring him in resting, but we'll also show that we trust. You see, trust is developed through time. When I met my wife, I just didn't see her and say, let's get married tomorrow. You see, she would have walked in the other direction. It took time to develop that trust. It takes time to get to know God and to trust him. And as we close, 3 John 2, a common verse that we've heard before. 3 John 2. It says, Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in good health, just as your soul prospers. I came across this word in the Greek, and it's sozo. And what's so interesting about sozo is that it means health and healing. It also means salvation. God's interested in both. And when our lives are in harmony with the best way to treat our bodies, we get to hear his voice clear, and we get to live longer to serve him and to share his message. So I pray that today, that there's something that you've gleaned, that maybe there's one of the letters from the Newstart acronym that you want to apply in your life. You know, maybe it's not getting enough rest. Maybe it's not getting enough water or exercise. Maybe God wants to make some modifications to your diet. I would say this, let God in. God can only bless what you surrender. Thank you for your time, and God bless you.